Earlier this year, a friend slash client of mine who is a small business owner was incredibly and blatantly and very intentionally knocked off by TJ Maxx. If you don't know what TJ Maxx is, it's an off-price chain with more than 1,300 stores in the United States. Off-price meaning things are sold at a discount that is allegedly lower than the retail price you'll find other places. And TJ Maxx is just one brand owned by TJX, which is the multinational megacorp who also owns HomeGoods, Marshalls, Sierra Trading Post, Winners, HomeSense, and in the UK, TK Maxx. And last year, TJX reported $56 billion in revenue. My friend's business, meanwhile, is run by her and her husband, literally supporting their family. And all of this came to light when an influencer who actually lives in Lancaster County shared a video of a bunch of new arrivals at our local TJ Maxx. Someone saw the copies of my friend's product in it. They tagged her. Then she shared the video. Then I watched it. And wow, these were exact replicas of her products. Now, you know by now that fast fashion is constantly knocking off every brand out there, even other fast fashion brands. And TJ Maxx is no exception. What made this especially striking and a slam dunk of a legal case was that TJ Maxx had actually reached out to my friend just a few months earlier about potentially carrying her products or working together on specific items just for them. So there was a clear chain of evidence here of intent. And my friend also copyrights all of her designs. So TJ Maxx was in a whole heap of trouble. The whole premise of TJ Maxx, or more like the whole illusion of it all, is that everything in TJ Maxx is actually leftovers from designer brands and overstock from department stores. And while that certainly was the case for TJ Maxx in the past, in this century, not so much. Why? Because off-price stores have blown up and expanded in this century. Beyond the TJX stores that are just filling strip malls across the US, there's also Ross, Nordstrom Rack, Saks South Fifth, Macy's Backstage. Even Bloomingdale's has an off-price chain of stores. And of course, there are also outlet malls near just about every tourist destination here in the United States, which all pretend to also sell overstock inventory. How could there possibly be enough overstock and slightly irregular products to fill them all? The answer is there's not. And now the bulk of the inventory and all of those off-price stores is made specifically for those stores, even if it has a real brand name label like Nike or Calvin Klein. To make this disconnect between the available overstock inventory and the number of stores it would need to fill just a little bit more clear, let's use Nordstrom and Nordstrom Rack as an example. The concept of Nordstrom Rack is that it sells overstock from its Nordstrom department stores. And sure, there is a little bit of that in each location grouped together with a sign that declares, "From our stores." But there are 258 Nordstrom Rack stores in operation right now. Meanwhile, there are only 93 Nordstrom department stores. How could these 93 stores generate enough extra inventory to fill 258 Nordstrom Racks? It couldn't. And so the store is filled with other stuff, some online returns, excess inventory from San Pedro Apparel Mart brands. I call bullshit on it being true overstock because of the sheer volume on the racks in each of these stores. I suspect that they are just placing orders up front with these brands. They have some overstock from brands that are way overproducing, but mostly the store is filled with product that was made specifically for Nordstrom Rack. And you'll see this across the store in every department. To be clear, I know this concretely because I have friends who literally work for companies that make private label products for Nordstrom Rack, TJ Maxx, Ross, and so on. And it is a big and lucrative business because while these chains will nickel and dime you on the cost of everything when you are the wholesale provider, business is booming at all of these off-price stores and has been for the last 15 years as they've been growing and growing. America loves a deal, even if it's just kind of a fake deal. If you look closely on the TJ Maxx website, the company even says that it's doing this, that it's developing stuff intentionally to sell in the stores. Quote, some of our merchandise is manufactured for us and some we design, particularly when what we see in the marketplace isn't the right value for our customers, meaning the right combination of brand, fashion, price, and quality. And by the way, the price is why TJ Maxx is likely to knock off a small brand because a small business will never be able to meet TJ Maxx's pricing requirements. If you think the pricing structure of fast fashion is very challenging to navigate from a production and buying standpoint, these off-price stores take it to the next level. Now, this whole thing can be kind of confusing to customers because nothing in a TJ Maxx store has a TJ Maxx label, right? So you don't know what was made especially for them. But that doesn't mean that there are labelless products just chilling at TJ Maxx. Everything has some kind of brand on it. For me, as a seasoned professional, the sort of fake brands, aka private label, are really easy for me to spot. They might not be for you. A private label product is one that a retailer gets produced by a third party, but sells it under its own brand name. Or in the case of many of these off-price stores, it might have labels that these manufacturers already use for all of its private label production. That manufacturer, vendor is another term for them, might have a license for a brand name that they can use too. Maybe they even license the name from someone like Authentic Brands Group. Or it might use some brand labels that TJ Maxx or Nordstrom Rack already own. For example, back when I was an accessories buyer at Urban Outfitters, we did not have a design team or a production department for accessories. So instead, I would go to these showrooms in New York City that made accessories and jewelry for everyone, from Macy's to Forever 21 to TJ Maxx to Anthropologie. I would either pick products from these showrooms' lines and tweak them to make them right for Urban, or I would develop something from scratch, sort of being the designer myself. Either way, each item would get one of the Urban Outfitters brand labels I talked about in the last episode. Later, at my other jobs, including Nasty Gal, some items might be designed in-house, and our production team worked directly with the factory to make it happen. But others were developed by me, the buyer, with vendors at the San Pedro Apparel Mart, who would just sew in our Nasty Gal labels. This is a very common practice, and just about every retailer out there is doing this in one way or another. In the case of what happened with my friend in TJ Maxx, clearly the buyer had sent photos of my friend's stuff to one of their vendors who decided that making exact copies was a good idea. And I mean, these copies were so exact, as a person who's very familiar with the product, that I was confused for a moment when I was watching that video. I thought that maybe my friend / client had collaborated with TJ Maxx, but forgot to tell me. And I gotta tell you, my friend would have never discovered that this happened if that influencer hadn't posted that video. And then, even more so, that if the algorithm hadn't served it to someone who recognized my friend's work, who sent it to her. Like, TJ Maxx could have very easily gotten away with this. I saw that video when my friend shared it, and while I was stunned by how exact the knockoffs were, I wasn't exactly surprised. I had seen this happen a few times last year with artists who sell their art either on Etsy or on their own websites. They would walk into a TJ Maxx or a home goods store and find exact copies of their art on coffee mugs, wall art, and other items. And every time these artists posted about it on social media, someone would send me the post. I would go look at the comment section, and 50% of the comment section were people being angry and supportive of the artist. And the other 50%, they were also being angry and supportive of TJ Maxx. Why didn't you trademark your work, is what they would ask, for example. And by the way, the fees for trademarking a design start at, in total, about $400-ish per use of the art. And that doesn't include paying a lawyer to do it. Out of reach for a lot of really small businesses. Another thing that these commenters would say is, this is just how business works and you should grow up and accept it. Or maybe this wouldn't have happened if you weren't overcharging for your work. Or you're obviously bad at business if this happened to you. It's not TJ Maxx's fault. They just buy excess inventory, so someone else did this to you. Stop blaming TJ Maxx. Even people saying, BRB, running to TJ Maxx right now to buy some of these for myself. It was shocking to me. I was like, are we really over here licking the boots of TJ Maxx? Like, clearly TJ Maxx copied this artist and you have like no empathy for this person. But I'm going to be honest. This is what you see on every post where an artist, maker, or designer, always small businesses, shares that a big company knocked them off. It's so gross and it's so frustrating to me that so many of us will show up to defend the honor of Shein or HomeGoods. When I saw this video of my friend's stolen designs, obviously I had to jump in right away to leave a comment talking about how disappointing this was, how her business was literally run by and supporting her family, and how her stuff is actually better quality too. Pretty innocuous, but just wanted to be one of the positive comments at the top. So that was in like March, I want to say. Well, in late June, I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee with Dustin, as I do every morning. We listen to NPR, we have coffee, we catch up on things. It was early and I was in my pajamas, and my phone just started blowing up, one notification after another, as someone named Hummingbird4E was tagging me over and over again. And I had no idea who this person was. And their comments weren't really making any sense because I was just seeing them as push notifications on my phone. And I was like, what is this person talking about? Until I realized that she was responding to my pretty innocuous comment on that video about my friend's products' designs being stolen. That video from 3 months ago. Hence why I was so confused. This is what Hummingbird4E had to say. And by the way, yes, I am using this person's actual ass username because if you're going to be rude and harass people who you do not know on the internet, or really harass people in general on the internet, then you deserve to be called out for it. Hummingbird4E's profile is, of course, on private anyway, but she said, this is the first of many comments, by the way. She kept increasing the sort of toxicity of her comments, but then deleting them and starting over again to get even more toxic. And so it was just, I was bombarded with this stuff. It was so confusing. She said, I can't believe how uneducated in the industry someone who runs a podcast is. Nowadays, everyone wants a podcast, even if they have no industry experience. Capitalism hate is so 2016 Reddit. We are now in 2025 and protecting our local economies with tariffs. Time to go outside the literal bubble and gain some real world knowledge. Okay, well, first off, Hummingbird4E. I think we can tell who you voted for. But beyond that, tariffs are actually going to destroy our local economy one small business at a time, and you need to go educate yourself on tariffs, which you probably won't. Anyway, Hummingbird4E wasn't just coming for me. She was responding to other people's comments on that post multiple times over, including the original comment from my friend saying, hey, these are copies of my work. She was giving my friend advice like, you should know that this is just how business works, and hopefully you'll learn a lesson and trademark your work next time. To others, she was saying, this isn't TJ Maxx's fault. This is whoever they bought it from. I tried to engage with her nicely. This is when I was still in my be nice to rude people on the internet era a few weeks ago. I explained my work experience, how TJ Maxx really gets their products, etc. But she just kept going and going, like writing more more intense responses, deleting them, and then doing it again and outdoing the previous one. And then finally, I just had to block her. But once again, I found myself asking out loud to Destin, why would someone spend hours fighting with strangers on the internet on behalf of TJ Maxx? After all, it's not like TJ Maxx, a huge brand that is part of a mega corporation, would return the favor, right? They're not going to show up to defend and protect Hummingbird 4E in traffic altercations and small claims court. Like, this is a favor without gratitude, we'll just say. I was like, why would you waste your time and, I don't know, raise your blood pressure and your stress level doing this? And then I remembered, branding. Let's think about it for a minute. TJ Maxx's core customer is a woman, often 25 to 54 years old. She tends to be middle to upper income. She sees herself as fashion conscious, but too smart to pay full price for it. Even Hummingbird 4E has passion for fashion in her Instagram profile. TJ Maxx literally has invented a term for its customers. It is Maxxinista, merging fashionista with Maxx to illustrate that its customer is stylish, but smarter than regular fashionistas because she never pays full price. Even on its website, TJ Maxx says, quote, "We're smart shoppers just like you." The TJ Maxx customer feels as if she is getting good value for her money because TJ Maxx has told her, quote, "Unlike more traditional retailers, we generally don't do promotional pricing activity like sales, coupons, or other gimmicks, just exciting merchandise at amazing prices every single day." In fact, the TJ Maxx customer feels like TJ Maxx is doing a service in the public good, right? Finding the best stuff, selling at the, quote, "real prices," rather than the higher prices of those greedy department stores with their merchandising and gimmicks. From the TJ Maxx website, we love our bright modern stores, and our lean, no-frills way of working helps us pass spectacular savings on to you. So don't expect fancy extras in our stores, just amazing merchandise at fantastic prices. TJ Maxx is like, hey, we have so much more like authenticity than any other brand out there, and we do that for you. And if your only exposure to TJ Maxx is shopping there and maybe following some Maxxinista accounts on social media that post their latest finds, or maybe you've seen TJ Maxx commercials on television, well, why wouldn't you think that TJ Maxx is amazing, worth protecting, and like doing good for this world? The fact of the matter is that TJ Maxx, like a lot of the big corporations out there, is not a good company. Customers have complained of declining quality of products over the years, along with less real brands in the store. TJ Maxx literally encourages customers to overconsume with no talk of sustainability or ethical manufacturing. The company canceled orders in 2020 and refused to hashtag pay up when other retailers bowed to public pressure and did the right thing. And last year, the Center for Environmental Health published a report that said while other retailers have worked hard to adapt their supply chains to avoid lead in products, off-price retailers, including TJ Maxx, who is named in this report, they have not done anything to avoid lead in their products. What else? Well, in California, last year, TJ Maxx workers filed a class action lawsuit alleging that they were forced to work through unpaid breaks and were not given the correct sick day accrual. The thing is, is TJ Maxx any worse than any other big company out there? Probably not. But it's also maybe not worth spending the day fighting with strangers on the internet. Think of the time, the energy, and the emotional impact of all of that. But that's the power of branding. It makes you feel like you are part of something, that your appreciation and consumption of that brand says something about you. And I like that we're starting this episode with TJ Maxx because it illustrates that while some brands are successful because they're cool or premium, TJ Maxx has taken a different approach, and it's just as powerful. The question remains, does TJ Maxx really need your defense? After all, it's a big corporation, not a person. And would TJ Maxx return the favor should you find yourself in hot water on social media? Well, when you put it that way, maybe not. My question for you is, what brand would you be happy to defend on social media for a few hours? Welcome to Clotheshorse, the podcast that is ambivalent about TJ Maxx, but gets really offended when someone refers to the grocery outlet as the gross out. True story. I once stopped dating someone over that, to be honest. It really bothered me. I was like, this guy, he's classist. Anyway, I'm your host, Amanda, and this is episode 240, part 2 in an ongoing series about brands and how they influence our identities and drive consumerism. In part 1, we explored the meanings of brand and branding along with the history of branding. I also revealed some brands that are really just kind of like licensed zombies of themselves at this point. You should definitely listen to that one first if you haven't yet. We'll be here waiting for you when you come back. In this episode, we're going to hopefully answer the question, why might someone get caught up in a brand and therefore maybe also be defending said brand's honor on social media? We'll explore the background and influence of Mark Goeb's 2000s book, Emotional Branding, considered the Bible of contemporary marketing and branding, which raises the question, why is it always the Bible? Why can't it be, the flowers in the attic of marketing and branding? Because listen, a lot of people have read the Bible, sure, and a lot of people think about the Bible all the time. I'm here to tell you that a lot of people read Flowers in the Attic, maybe even multiple times, and decades later, they are still asking themselves, did I accidentally get caught up in and enjoy a book about incest? Anyway, just saying, Flowers in the Attic, also impactful on generations of people. We're also going to walk through the 10 commandments of emotional branding from Mark Goeb's book, and we're going to look at examples of how they have been applied. This is one of those things that once someone shows it to you, you will never stop seeing it. And we'll unpack how the application of these 10 commandments has influenced our own relationships with brands, building large communities of strangers who are brought together because of where they like to shop and what they like to buy. My goal in all of this is for all of us to realize that brands are not our friends. Many brands are running off vibes, and that it's low-key kind of stifling and maybe even damaging to build our identities around them. Plus, when you stop caring about brand names, you probably just start dressing for yourself and buying and wearing things you like, which is always great for cutting down your consumerism. And as I said in the last episode, I want you to be a part of it. Some of you have sent me your own brand stories already, which will be shared in future episodes, but keep them coming. I love hearing your thoughts on this. Send me your stories about brands that you used to be obsessed with, or why you aren't anymore, or maybe you still are. A brand that disappointed you, or a brand you love now because of something they did or didn't do. You can record these thoughts as a voice memo on your phone and send them to me, which is my first preference. Or you can write an email, but please do not DM me on Instagram because chances are I will miss it because my notifications are always blowing up on there from people like Hummingbird4E. My email address is always in the show notes, but here I'm just saying it out loud to you because it's pretty easy to remember. It is amanda@clotheshorse.world. Okay, before we jump into all of this, I am required by the flowers in the attic of podcasting, yeah, it's not really working. Still, think about that book a lot. I have to remind you that Clotheshorse is coming to the West Coast in October, and I'm doing 2 live shows. The first one is on Thursday, October 23rd in Seattle, Washington at Hereafter. The second is Sunday, October 26th in Portland, Oregon at Holocene. Tickets are on sale. A very limited number are available, so please go get them now. Both venues have told me that tickets are selling pretty fast, which is great to hear because if this goes well, I'm going to do more shows next year. They're saying they'll probably sell out as we get closer to the show, so do not procrastinate. Links are in the show notes and at clotheshorsepodcast.com. A 1999 New York Times article about furniture design called Seductive Objects with a Sly Sting declared, in the last 50 years, the economic base has shifted from production to consumption. It has gravitated from the sphere of rationality to the realm of desire, from the objective to the subjective to the realm of psychology. In other words, people are buying things because they make them feel a certain way, and nothing could be truer about branding, particularly the notion of emotional branding in this century. These words are so true that Mark Gobe, writer of the 2001 book Emotional Branding, chose to get started with those words in the introduction. Gobe, the founder and former CEO of one of the top branding firms in the world, changed the very nature of marketing and branding in this century. And everything he discusses in this book and his follow-ups, Brand Jam, Humanizing Brands Through Emotional Design, and Citizen Brand, 10 Commandments for Transforming Brands in a Consumer Democracy, everything he wrote has been used either intentionally or indirectly by every big brand, successful startup, and cult brand in this century. What I imagine is that people read his books, then they had meetings at their offices to share what they had learned from these books and assign projects based on this. And people did those projects, and then those people went to other companies where they took what they learned from doing those projects and applied it there. And then the people who worked for them went to other companies and did the same thing, and it spread and spread, and emotional branding really became the flowers in the attic of marketing in the 21st century. Over the next 2 episodes, we're going to dig into the framework of emotional branding while also exploring examples of Gobe's theory in action. He passed away in 2014 from a brain tumor, but the impact of his ideas continues. And while I'm pretty cynical about marketing, which would tend to make me pretty cynical towards Gobe's work, I have to acknowledge that he also had some pretty radical ideas about the roles we as consumers play in sort of building the world we live in. He believed in the concept of a consumer democracy. That was the focus of his book, Citizen Brand. And it's hard to find any media coverage of his work because it existed in a largely early internet era, so it no longer exists online. But I did find this mid-2000s interview with him from the blog Design Emotion. On the topic of consumer democracy, he said, quote, Citizen Brand was an attempt to bring a better understanding to the role brands play within society. My feeling was that people were seeing a cause to rebel against the manipulation and lack of ethics of certain brands. Brands need to be about responsibility, and people are not ready to sponsor brands that are not in line with their beliefs. Brand activism could go in 2 directions. It could be against the concept of branding in general, or, as I believe, a way for consumers to change the course of a brand's direction by voting with their wallet for the brands they believe in. I predicted this would be the influence of a consumer democracy. There's something bittersweet about reading those words now in an era where it feels like a lot of things we buy, regardless of the category of product or the label on it, seems to somehow be controlled by a small group of businesses. And I see how the ideas of Citizen Brand, specifically brands that stand for something and give back, was weaponized as a marketing tool from the mid 2000s until recently, with give back products, promised donations, even the girl boss era. We'll talk about all of that next week. But Gobe's words also feel more important and real than ever. And by real, I mean people are finally recognizing their power to steer the courses of these brands. If you don't think that lots of intense conversations are happening behind the scenes at Target right now regarding the impact of the boycott, well, trust me, they are. It's easy in a world of billionaires buying elections and mega corporations price gouging and then stepping on workers. It's easy when that's happening around us to think that we are powerless to change anything. But as I always remind myself, when I start to feel hopeless, there are way more of us than there are of them. And they need us literally to keep their businesses going as both customers and workers. We can't let them get away with anything. Let's take a moment to thank some of the incredible small businesses who keep Clotheshorse going via their generous Patreon support. Slow Fashion Academy is a size-inclusive sewing and pattern-making studio based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Designer and fashion professor Ruby Gertz teaches workshops for hobbyists and aspiring designers so that anyone can learn the foundational skills of making, mending, and altering their own clothes. Several times per year, Ruby offers her flagship Sloper workshop, an in-person 2-day pattern-making retreat where you will learn how to drape a set of basic block patterns that capture your unique shape and proportions. You can also use these basic block or sloper patterns as a foundation for infinite styles of garments that are custom made to your body's one-of-a-kind contours. Or compare your sloper to commercial patterns to see where you might need to alter the shape. No more guessing at full bust, flat seam, or sway back adjustments. Start with a foundation that fits. Ruby also provides professional design and pattern making services to emerging slow fashion brands and occasionally takes commissions for custom garments and costume pieces. She has also released several PDF sewing patterns for original designs under her brands Spokes and Stitches and Starling Petite Plus. I just want to also add here on a personal note that right now Ruby is actually working with me to create a one-of-a-kind, unique to me special dress that I will be wearing for all future Clotheshorse events, including live episodes later this year in the Pacific Northwest. I am so excited to work with Ruby because she is so talented and so knowledgeable about all things clothing creation. Check out the schedule for upcoming workshops, download PDF sewing patterns, and learn about additional sewing and design services at www.slowfashion.academy. And it's important for me to tell you that that's slowfashion.academy. Selena Sanders, a social impact brand that specializes in upcycle clothing using only reclaimed, vintage, or thrifted materials, from tea towels, linens, blankets, and quilts. Sustainably crafted in Los Angeles, each piece is designed to last in one's closet for generations to come. Maximum style, minimal carbon footprint. Shift clothing out of beautiful Astoria, Oregon, with a focus on natural fibers, simple hardworking designs, and putting fat people first. Discover more at shiftwheeler.com. Late to the party, creating one-of-a-kind statement clothing from vintage, salvaged, and thrifted textiles. They hope to tap into the dreamy memories we all hold. Floral curtains, a childhood dress, the wallpaper in your best friend's rec room, all while creating modern, sustainable garments that you'll love wearing and have for years to come. Late to the Party is passionate about celebrating and preserving textiles, the memories they hold, and the stories they have yet to tell. Check them out on Instagram at Late to the Party People. Vino Vintage, based just outside of LA. We love the hunt of shopping secondhand because you never know what you might find. Catch us at flea markets around Southern California by following us on Instagram at vino.vintage so you don't miss our next event. Dylan Page is an online clothing and lifestyle brand based out of St. Louis, Missouri. Our products are chosen with intention for the conscious community. Everything we carry is animal-friendly, ethically made, sustainably sourced, and cruelty-free. Dylan Page is for those who never stop questioning where something comes from. We know that personal experience dictates what's sustainable for you, and we are here to help guide and support you to make choices that fit your needs. Check us out at dylanpage.com and find us on Instagram at dylanpagelife&style. Salt Hats, purveyors of truly sustainable hats, hand-blocked, sewn, and embellished in Detroit, Michigan. Find us on Instagram at Salt Hats. Gentle Vibes Vintage. We are purveyors of polyester and psychedelic relics. We encourage experimentation and play not only in your wardrobe, but in your home too. We have thousands of killer vintage pieces ready for their next adventure. See them all on Instagram at Gentle Vibes Vintage. Thumbprint is Detroit's only fair trade marketplace, located in the historic Eastern Market. Our small business specializes in products handmade by empowered women in South Africa, making a living wage, creating things they love like hand-painted candles and ceramics. We also carry a curated assortment of sustainable and natural locally made goods. Thumbprint is a great gift destination for both the special people in your life and for yourself. Browse our online store at thumbprintdetroit.com and find us on Instagram at thumbprintdetroit. Vagabond Vintage DTLV is a vintage clothing, accessories, and decor reselling business based in downtown Las Vegas, Nevada. Not only do we sell in Las Vegas, but we're also located throughout resale markets in San Francisco, as well as at a curated boutique called Lux and Ivy, located in Indianapolis, Indiana. Jessica, the founder and owner of Vagabond Vintage DTLV, recently opened the first IRL location located in the Arts District of downtown Las Vegas on August 5th. The shop has a strong emphasis on 60s and 70s garments, single-stitch tees, and dreamy loungewear. Follow them on Instagram at Vagabond Vintage DTLV and keep an eye out for their website coming fall of 2022. So listen, I have a question for you. Have you, yes, you, ever found yourself defending a brand, a retailer, an MLM, an exercise plan, or really any other product in the comments section of a social media post? Have you ever fallen on your proverbial sword for Trader Joe's or Shein or SoulCycle or Hello Kitty or Selkie? I, like all of you, have brands that I trust and like. My favorite cosmetics are from Axiology and Half Magic. I love the soap and body moisturizer from Vellum Street. I buy most of my personal care and cleaning products from Grove Collaborative. I eat enough Fly by Jing chili crisp for a family of 4. I really like David's toothpaste. Humble is my current favorite deodorant. And when it comes to clothes, I like Nettle Studios, Gravel and Gold, Nikki Chasen, Boyko, Meals, and Young Maven. I really like Flower Mountain sneakers, and I wear Melissa Jelly shoes almost every day. And I buy stuff from these brands because I trust them, the quality is good, the aesthetic is in line with what I like, and I feel some sort of connection to them. Am I going to get into a fight with strangers on the internet about any of them? Probably not. Okay, well that's not true, because I would definitely get into a fight with anyone who is mean to Nettle Studios. But I have fallen in and out of love with brands over the years. You can always kind of tell what brand I really love at a specific time because I usually buy something from that brand as a birthday gift to myself. Back in the day, it was usually Free People. But after working for Nuuly and attending all of the Free People product meetings and interacting more with the team there, seeing the dysfunction of it all, and finally seeing in black and white how little they were paying to make the clothes they sell for much, much more, well, the spell was broken. While Free People once represented a certain vibe and a way of life that I wanted to embody, now it just feels gross and very, very uncute. Definitely not something I want to be a part of anymore. After my Free People phase, I was obsessed with Selkie, and for a few years in a row, I bought a Selkie dress each year for my birthday. That brand, its aesthetic, and its marketing felt like the fantasy life I wanted to have. It felt like I was wearing on the outside what I felt on the inside. But after the company used AI to design some prints last year and the way the founder handled all of it, I just felt less interested. And honestly, seeing the way people were over consuming and hoarding these dresses in the Facebook fan group, it just ruined it for me. We're talking 2, 3, 4 dresses from every single drop. There's usually at least one drop a month. There were literally husbands building entire rooms to house someone's Selkie collection. I also felt like some of the people in that group didn't share my own personal values, and I didn't want to be a part of that anymore either. In between Free People and Selkie, there was a brief, very brief dalliance with Love Shack Fancy. But I had a really weird and uncomfortable visit to their New York showroom where I was visiting as a buyer planning to place orders for Nuuly. I left feeling like Love Shack Fancy was really a brand for skinny, white, rich ladies, and they would prefer that I not be a part of their lifestyle. So what am I going to buy myself for my birthday this year? Probably a ticket to Japan again because it's the only thing I feel like I need right now. Send your suggestions for Japan episodes my way. I have a few ideas, and one of them is about toilets. You're going to love it. But one thing you might have noticed as I talked about the brands I loved in the past, but kind of feel meh about now, is that in all 3 situations, it was something I wanted to be a part of, that I wanted to sort of wrap myself in for the outside world until I realized that I just wasn't into it anymore. But why? Why would I want to be a part of a brand? Oh, you mean I can be a customer there? Sure, but couldn't then anyone be a part of it? It's just called being a customer, right? Or more importantly, could I just buy something from them and leave it at that? What is this whole desire to be a part of a store, a brand, a big corporation? I mean, isn't that what it is when I say I want to be a part of something? Feeling as if you are a part of something is a key element of branding in this century. Whether your vegan, plastic-free deodorant makes you feel like a responsible environmentalist every time you wear it, or that French puff dress makes you feel like a character out of Bridgerton, your relationship with brands is all about the vibes they are creating and which vibes react best with your brand. Yesterday I had a headache and I just felt kind of annoyed with the world. It was hot, I was sweaty, I was tired, and everyone at the grocery store was being really rude and loud. And so on the car ride home, I went on a rant to Dustin about how I have so much anxiety about people over consuming workout clothes. This is what it's like to live with me, okay? This turned into a whole diatribe about how it sucks that most activewear is plastic and toxic, and I know sometimes it is the best option for some forms of exercise, but why aren't we limiting our consumption of these items to the bare minimum if they're kind of a necessary evil? And by the way, I work out in like cotton pants and a t-shirt. You don't always need a pair of leggings for it, but I understand why people need leggings. So anyway, I'm just like stressed about all the Lululemon leggings that are going to end up in the landfill someday. Now, when you're talking to Mr. Dustin Travis White about your frustration with things like non-biodegradable clothing, he's generally a pretty captive audience. And his opinion on all of this was that many of the top-selling activewear brands like Nike or Free People Movement, Outdoor Voices, Lululemon, they all have very strong branding that almost sort of indoctrinates people into their sort of activewear cult, making them want to wear these clothes everywhere as a signal that they are part of that cult, or at least that lifestyle, that they are part of something. I get it. Also, these brands are status symbols at this point. Lululemon leggings are $98. Wearing them out in the world shows that you have the means to afford $98 leggings, which says something in a society where wealth is admired and worshipped and is often the goal. But also, critics of Lululemon have been saying for years that the brand operates like a cult. The company says on its website, "Our purpose is to elevate the world by realizing the full potential within every one of us," which does sound pretty intense for, a store at the mall that sells leggings. Why would a clothing company be elevating the world and helping us find our full potential? Think about it. Employees of Lululemon talk about an internal culture of toxic positivity, focus on personal growth via constant and often negative feedback, pressure to exercise constantly, and share personal information with their managers. Also, Lululemon is linked to Landmark Forum, a quote, self-help program that is considered very cultish. And I'll tell you, at Nasty Gal, some of our executives were from Lululemon, and the things they would say to us and the vocabulary they made us repeat, it was very cult-like, and it felt very designed to sort of break down our skepticism on anything they said. It was incredibly manipulative. I mean, some of them had certificates from Landmark Forum on their desks. It was pretty wild. I'm going to share some links in the show notes about Lululemon and its cultish nature. One is an article from Refinery29 that felt not very critical and maybe on board with the cultishness. And then I got to the bottom where it said that Lululemon had paid for the entire trip. The other one is from Business Insider and talks to a bunch of former employees, and what they have to say is very concerning. I mean, just saying, hey, everyone, this clothing brand is kind of like a cult is pretty weird, right? But this cultishness is not an accident. It is very much intentional. And if you or someone you know is actively wearing Lululemon leggings right now, or is obsessed with some other brand just as much, I want you to know that it doesn't make you or that person less smart or a bad person. One of the many books I read to prep for this series was Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell, and I highly recommend it for anyone who is remotely interested in cults and why people end up in them. It's a strangely light and breezy read for such a heady concept. When Parade magazine, not the underwear brand, asked her in 2022 why she wrote Cultish, this is what she said. I want to implicate us all and show us that nobody is immune to cultish influence. Prevailing wisdom will tell us that cult followers are desperate or disturbed or naive, but that's really not true. What I and many other scholars have found is that the people most likely to join cults or wind up in destructive groups are really intelligent, bright, and cheerful. They're optimistic. They're idealistic in a way that can sometimes not be positive. It is that same optimism and idealism that gets us to buy into a clothing brand whose purpose, alongside making lots of money, is allegedly elevating the world by realizing the full potential within every one of us. And emotional branding sort of plugs into that innate goodness, the desire for joy, and the intelligence within all of us. Furthermore, we're all lonelier and more isolated than we have ever been as a species. Finding our people, a place where we belong, a place where we feel safe, it's challenging. Sure, we might find that at school or church or our volunteer gigs, our families, in our hobbies, but sometimes it's just not in any of those places either. And that's how people get sucked into CrossFit and MLMs and intense political conversations on social media, specific Facebook groups or subreddits, or even via just being really, really into a brand and finding others who love it. There are a ton of subreddits and Facebook groups devoted to one single brand, and people are chatting in those groups every day, building friendships and a shared sense of purpose. The original version of emotional branding was released in 2001. I have the updated version from 2009, which, while being updated to reflect social media and online shopping and the Obama campaign, still feels pretty out of date in some places, particularly in terms of language. But it was also published 16 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. I'm telling you this because I'm about to read you another quote from that Design Emotion interview with Mark Gobe. He uses the term tribe, which never ceases to give me white lady who loves free people and moon juice vibes. And by now, language has evolved enough, I hope, that we recognize that the use of the word tribe by white people to talk about marketing is just not okay. But here's the quote, which actually does, when you ignore the antiquated word use, touch on why we get so sucked into brands. I also support the idea of new tribes in which the individual is recognized, but in the context of specific shared values. For instance, what the Kinsey research did for America was more than just giving data to people about their sex lives. It also brought a sense that on the fringe of the perfect heterosexual society, many people were defying the norm. Therefore, someone who felt isolated and personally at odds with the rest of society could find out that actually many others were like him or her. The web, he means the internet, is becoming that tribe. People can meet and connect with others who have the same values without losing their own sense of identity. These fringe groups are often the most influential and the most likely to adopt a brand that will support their choices. Mass marketing is dead. Understanding communities of individuals is the future of marketing. Essentially, what Goeb is saying here is this: a good brand, a well-marketed and well-defined brand, will create a community around it that people will want to join. They will want to be part of something. So let's look at some examples here. First is Selkie. Before every fast fashion brand started knocking them off, Selkie was the first, more widely distributed brand to sort of speak to this particular aesthetic and the people who wanted to wear pastels and big fluffy dresses and drink tea in rose gardens, go to Bridgerton balls, generally live this life of, idealized princess in a watercolor painting at golden hour. Doesn't sound lovely? And the people who gravitated to Selkie were so thirsty for this because previously it had been almost impossible to find. Now these people not only get to buy the clothes they fantasized about wearing, they get to connect with others in the Facebook group for Selkie and go to meetups for Selkie fans and share photos of themselves on social media with their other Selkie friends in their Selkie dresses. There are so many photo shoots happening in Selkie at any given moment, as far as I can tell, and there are many Selkie weddings. I would also group together the more dopamine dressing brands like New Works and Big Bud Press and Fashion Brand Company. These are brands that stepped in and created fun clothes for adults, full of color, boldness, and whimsy when the status quo of fashion was kind of either boho, sexy, or beige. And these brands also have incredible customer loyalty, complete with customers who shop from every drop and very active Facebook groups and subreddits for reselling, sharing outfit inspiration, try-on photos, and speculation about the next drop. And yes, people from the New Works group have literally made plans to hang out in real life and then documented it with photos in their New Works dresses. I think it's easy to see why these cool indie brands would have thriving communities surrounding them. But guess what? There are also multiple TJ Maxx, Marshalls, HomeGoods, subreddits, and Facebook groups where customers share their finds, their outfits, and decorating ideas. One of the groups on Facebook has 468,000 members. Ulta, the makeup store, that's a terrible way to describe it, but hopefully you know what Ulta is. Ulta has a serious subreddit that is solely for customers, sharing their orders and product feedback and suggestions, and their frustration with the rewards system. The discount grocery store Aldi has multiple Facebook groups. The Isle of Shame group, one of the Aldi groups, has almost 2 million members. Aldi also has a subreddit. I had to leave the Isle of Shame group a while back because it was getting transphobic, but to be honest, it was a relief because those people were over shopping every single week, not for groceries, but for the clothes and tchotchkes on the Isle of Shame, which is an aisle in every Aldi store. It's kind of sort of closer to the frozen food that is just full of things that are not food items. They drop them, I want to say, every Wednesday, and it leads to people showing up at Aldi every Wednesday when the store opens. And by the way, for all of you Aldi mega fans, I recently read an article, I can't remember where, I'll try to find it and share it in the show notes, that Aldi is now they're getting rid of their buyers for the Isle of Shame, and they're using AI to plan all orders and products for that aisle, which is one more reason not to buy it. Also, Aldi had clothes on order before the pandemic that it canceled in 2020, and it refused to pay up for them, just like TJ Maxx, just like Urban Outfitters, just like Anthropologie. So yeah, people are over shopping in some of these Facebook groups, the Aldi aisle of shame being an extreme example. And that brings me to one of the sort of halo effects of these customer/fan communities. They drive others to shop, like a lot. One person posts something that they bought, then everyone else is looking for one too. At least in the clothing brand groups, buy, sell, trade is part of the agenda. But in the TJ Maxx, Ulta, and Aldi groups, people are just cycling through a lot of stuff really, really fast. Allegedly, these groups are in no way run by the brands themselves, but wow, I would love to know the data on how much sales revenue is driven by these groups sharing and getting others to shop too. The thing is, no one shows up to these groups because they are looking to overconsume. They show up because they want to meet other people who appreciate the same things. It's like joining a bird watching group or a book club or a sewing circle or following the subreddit for your favorite show. Except shopping is at the core of it all. Mark Gobe didn't exactly predict the Aldi Isle of Shame Facebook group in his book, but he did lay out the 10 commandments of emotional branding that ultimately do lead to a group of 2 million people who are all searching for the same cat bed and burgundy leggings in one aisle of a discount grocery store. Because as Gobe says in Emotional Branding, the biggest misconception in branding strategies is the belief that branding is about market share, when it is really always about mind and emotion share. People will fulfill their desires for themselves and for everyone around them by bringing an unprecedented personal and emotional dimension to their choices and decisions. In other words, people want vibes and meaning, not just a catchy jingle or a coupon. And with the right vibes and meaning, you will find yourself with a brand that builds a community around it. So what are the 10 commandments of emotional branding? Well, before we jump into them, I do want to point out again that the original version of emotional branding was published in 2001, with the updated version that I own released in 2009. Where were we time-wise at that point? And this was interesting to me to go back and find these dates for you. So the first iPhone was released in 2007. It did not exist when this book was originally written. I'm not even really sure if it's mentioned in the revised version. Instagram wouldn't launch until 2010. MySpace was pretty popular in 2008 until it was overshadowed by Facebook in 2010. Barack Obama won the presidential election in 2008, and the global financial crisis and the ensuing recession began in 2008 as well. Mark Gobe is writing during a time of remarkable social and technological change. Amazon was still a bookstore. Fast fashion was still primarily Forever 21 and H&M. Target was still in its designer collab and people calling it Target era. Whole Foods was still owned by Amazon, and around this time, I dated a guy who always referred to it as whole paycheck, and it never made me laugh. Gobe is writing about a world that would look very different by 2020, much less 2025. Still, as I walk through these 10 commandments and we dissect them, we are going to see that they are still very much in practice right now. And these are all very conscious, strategic decisions being made by brands to connect with us emotionally. And once we start talking them through, you're never going to be able to unsee them again. So commandment number 1 is consumers buy, people live. Rather than seeing customers as consumers who must be manipulated and conquered, brands should create desire in customers without harassing them or talking down to them. One thing we will talk about more next week is Gobe's assertion that people don't want to feel like they are being sold to, so you kind of have to be sneaky about it. And the social media era and its influencers actually made it really easy to sell to someone without it feeling like an ad. But he didn't even know this was coming at this point. Commandment 2, products fulfill needs, experiences fulfill desires. This is the dawn of more elaborate merchandising in stores, the Instagrammability of it all being really essential, and a desire to spend more time shopping in a space. This is when stores started to add cafes or a bar or some other non-shopping experience to their space. This is also how car companies started sponsoring music festivals and stores started hosting bands and tarot card readers. Commandment number 3, honesty is expected, trust is engaging and intimate. It needs to be earned. Now, this one is interesting because even though it was early in the life of the internet when Gobe wrote this, he felt that brands were essentially required to be honest now because the internet exposed everything about them. And I do think that social media made it easier to interact with brands and call them out, get your friends to pile on. I initially signed up for Twitter back in I don't even know what year, solely so I could complain to United Airlines about my seat assignment. And this is the era of doing that, right? And then there are the blogs, in the aughts, there was Urban Counterfeiters and then later Diet Prada on Instagram. These platforms facilitated communicating the bad things that brands were doing that weren't big enough for the traditional media outlets to cover, but mattered nonetheless. But I also think in the past 10 years or so, brands have gotten better at hiding the truth using technology and the existing ecosystem of social media and digital content to create a smokescreen. I think a lot about Nike simultaneously flooding the internet with stories about recycled sneakers, what a miracle, while also lobbying aggressively against any legislation that would ban the import of products made with Uyghur forced labor. That doesn't seem guilty at all, does it? A smart brand with resources can easily drown out the bad stories with some affiliate marketing and a good advertising campaign. Thinking about this commandment and the idea of trust reminded me of an example of a brand that really gained my trust on a much higher level in the way it dealt with a difficult situation. And that brand is Newworks. Now, I've always admired Newworks, and I often use them as a case study in good branding and good business practices when I'm teaching small business classes. If you don't know what Newworks is, it's a company that makes clothing in the United States. All production is done in the Bay Area, and the prints on the clothes are part of collaborations with a diverse range of awesome artists. This blurb from their website really nails it. Newworks is a woman-owned, women-run business. We make limited edition textiles with artists we love and cuts to make you look and feel good. All of our garments are produced in California. We try to source all of our materials in the USA, and we work with incredibly nice people. We are a small team with a lot of love. Thanks for your support. I mean, after reading that, my heart is full of vibes for this brand. But it's all genuine, Over the years, they have extended their sizes to 5X, and they have very open, transparent communication with their customers. It's no wonder that they have this highly engaged, very devoted fan base. And because they operate with such integrity, their clothing is essentially collectible with high resale value. So there is a thriving secondhand economy within the Newworks fan community. In 2023, Newworks revealed a new print collab with California artist Anna Osgood. Almost immediately, the comments section on the Instagram post filled with people who thought that the print looked a little familiar to them, with some actually sharing art that indicated that the print was a direct copy. The problem was that the print wasn't a copy of art by Anna Osgood. It was the work of Brazilian artist João Incerti. What happened next is where and when Newworks won my trust and admiration in a major way. Allegations of copying and knockoffs happen nonstop in fashion. I mean, this episode began with TJ Maxx stealing my friend's work. Generally, when it's called out, especially on social media, the brand quietly pulls the product, then destroys it or sells it off to someone like TJ Maxx. The social media team goes into hyperdrive, deleting the posts and any negative comments. It may even turn off commenting for a few days. essentially going silent until people move on. And the thing is, it usually works because there is always something new to be upset about. Newworks took a different approach. It extra super communicated about it with a series of posts. They reached out to the original artist, Inserti, offering to pay him for the use of the art. After all, the product was already made, it cost a lot of money to make, and destroying it would be both irresponsible/wasteful and a big hit for a small business like Newworks. Inserti instead asked them to donate the money he would have been paid as an artist to 2 charities. Newworks also renamed the print Desert Disaster. This might seem like a minor blip in a chaotic world, but it just felt so real, so honest, and so thoughtful, especially in comparison to how most brands would have handled this situation. That trust made me a fan for life. If you're enjoying this episode, then this is a great time to remind you that my work here at Clotheshorse is made possible by the support of listeners like you, just like NPR, and these great small businesses. Please go give them your support. Blank Cass, or Blanket Coats by Cass, is focused on restoring, renewing, and reviving the history held within vintage and heirloom textiles. By embodying the love, craft, and energy that is original to each vintage textile as I transfer it into a new garment, I hope we can reteach ourselves to care for and mend what we have and make it last. Blank Cass lives on Instagram at blank_Cass, and a website will be launched soon at blankcass.com. Located in Whistler, Canada, Velvet Underground is a velvet jungle full of vintage and secondhand clothing, plants, a vegan cafe, and lots of rad products from other small sustainable businesses. Our mission is to create a brand and community dedicated to promoting self-expression, as well as educating and inspiring a more sustainable and conscious lifestyle, both for the people and the planet. Find us on Instagram at shop_Velvet Underground or online at www.shopvelvetunderground.com. St. Evens is a New York City-based vintage shop that is dedicated to bringing you those special pieces you'll reach for again and again. More than just a store, St. Evens is dedicated to sharing the stories and history behind the garments. 10% of all sales are donated to a different charitable organization each month. New vintage is released every Thursday at wearstevens.com with previews of new pieces and more, brought to you on Instagram at wear_st.evens. That's Wear St. Evens. Country Feedback is a mom and pop record shop in Tarboro, North Carolina. They specialize in used rock, country, and soul and offer affordable vintage clothing and housewares. Do you have used records you want to sell? Country Feedback wants to buy them. Find us on Instagram at Country Feedback Vintage and Vinyl, or head down east and visit our brick and mortar. All are welcome at this inclusive and family-friendly record shop in the country. Republica Unicornia Yarns, handmade yarn and notions for the color obsessed, made with love and some swearing in fabulous Atlanta, Georgia by head yarn wench Kathleen. Get ready for rainbows with a side of giving a damn. Republica Unicornia is all about making your own magic using small batch, responsibly sourced, hand-dyed yarns and thoughtfully made notions. Slow fashion all the way down and discover the joy of creating your very own beautiful hand-knit, crocheted, or woven pieces. Find us on Instagram at Republica_Unicornia_yarns and at www.republicaunicornia.com. Picnic Wear, a slow fashion brand ethically made by hand from vintage and dead stock materials, most notably vintage towels. Founder Danny has worked in the industry as a fashion designer for over 10 years, but started Picnic Wear in response to her dissatisfaction with the industry's shortcomings. Picnic Wear recently moved to rural North Carolina, where all their sewing and accessories are now designed and cut, but the majority of their sewing is done by skilled garment workers in New York City. Their customers take comfort in knowing that all their sewists are paid well above New York City minimum wage. Picnic wear offers minimal waste and maximum authenticity. Future vintage over future garbage. Cute Little Ruin is an online shop dedicated to providing quality vintage and secondhand clothing, vinyl, and home items in a wide range of styles and price points. If it's ethical and legal, we try to find a home for it. Vintage style with progressive values. Find us on Instagram at Cute Little Ruin. Is there a little bit of Italy in your soul? Are you an enthusiast of pre-loved decor and accessories? Bring vintage Italian style and history into your space with the pewter thimble. We source useful and beautiful things and mend them where needed. We also find gorgeous illustrations and make them print-worthy. Tarot cards, tea towels, and hand-picked treasures available to you from the comfort of your own home. Responsibly sourced from across Rome, lovingly renewed by fairly paid artists and artisans, with something for every budget. Discover more at thepewterthimble.com. Deco Denim is a startup based out of San Francisco, and it sells clothing and accessories that are sustainable, gender fluid, size inclusive, and high quality, made to last for years to come. Deco Denim is trying to change the way you think about buying clothes. Founder Sarah Mattis wants to empower people to ask important questions like, where was this made? Was this garment made ethically? Is this fabric made of plastic? Can this garment be upcycled? And if not, can it be recycled? Sign up at decodenim.com to receive $20 off your first purchase. They promise not to spam you and send out no more than 3 emails a month, with 2 of them surrounding education or a personal note from the founder. Again, that's decodenim.com. Okay, commandment number 4, quality for the right price is a given today. Preference creates the sale. I mean, I laugh so hard at this section, just going to remind you again that Gobe is writing this in a pre-fast fashion world. He specifically says in this section, Levi's is a quality brand, but it has currently lost its preferential status. Victoria's Secret, a brand that has achieved an enviable and highly charged emotional connection with consumers today, is revolutionizing a new category and redefining the hosiery and beauty business. I think it's important to call out that when he wrote this, many of us were heavily dousing ourselves in Love Spells body spray or any of the other Victoria's Secret body stuff out there. Millennials, do not deny your love for heavily spraying yourself with Victoria's Secret body stuff. It was the precursor to Glossier. Glossier could not gloss without our earlier addiction to all of the stuff at Victoria's Secret, which all the smell of all that stuff haunts me. Now I feel like I can taste it just saying the phrase Love Spells out loud. But also what Gobe is saying here, it really does point to something. The fact that most of us are gross about Victoria's Secret right now in 2025, and I would say most of us consider Levi's a respectable heritage brand, well, that speaks to how preference changes with time and trend and brand image. But also quality for the right price is a given is laughable in the fast fashion era when price rarely indicates quality when you're buying from a big retailer. And really, this just illustrates to me that many brands have been coasting by on vibes for the last decade, deprioritizing quality and getting away with it because so many people are devoted to the brand. I will tell you, I have worked for several brands in my career whose thoughts from like a strategy perspective were brand, marketing, and image are way more important than the product. If the product is okay, that's fine because we're making sales based on who we are, right? And, you know, I think it was a little short-sighted because for some of those brands, they aren't around anymore or they're not doing very well now because people are suddenly like, wait, were you selling me bad product all along, but I was just all caught up in the feelings of it all? Probably, definitely. And I mean, a great example is at Nasty Gal, we have this problem where the company would spend so much money on marketing to acquire one customer The customer would show up, place an order, get it, be disappointed because the quality and fit of the product did not align with the brand image at all. So it was incredibly disappointing. And so then they would return the entire order and then never come back and make another purchase. So the company was bleeding money on marketing and customer acquisition that never came back because customers just didn't find that the product fit the brand. And this is a pretty common story in the past 15 or 20 years. But I do believe that when Gobe wrote this book in the early 2000s, most of the product out there, whether it was clothes or cosmetics, was pretty much kind of the same quality, maybe just a different aesthetic. And what really did differentiate it and really dictate the price of what a customer would pay for it was the branding and the vibes surrounding that brand. He just didn't know how fast fashion was going to ruin everything yet. Commandment number 5, being known does not mean that you are also loved. Truer words have never been written. But for years, brands felt that just awareness of the brand was good enough, that if you were reminded of a brand often enough, eventually you would just buy it because it was familiar to you. They would just sort of wear you down. I swear this is how I ended up binging Girls in 2015, the HBO program. I'd seen a little bit of it in a hotel room once, and I was like, I don't know, I hate all these people. I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, I'm never going to watch it. But it just kept coming up in conversations and in blogs, and it was just everywhere I looked. And finally, I sat down and watched it, and I loved it. I'm not saying that Girls was specifically trying to break me down, but I do think that there's something to be said for this idea that companies had for a really long time, which was like, if we just flood the ether with our brand, eventually you'll just buy from us. Now, in this century, brands have realized that customers need to like them. And that sounds pretty basic in 2025, but this was a startlingly new concept when Gobe rolled it out. What we get out of this realization that brands need to be likable is that in the 2000s and the 2010s, we saw long-hated brands like Texaco and AT&T and even Walmart trying to build affection within their customer base with things like give back campaigns and expensive commercials and funny social media posts and sponsoring events and so much more. And we're going to talk about that in a lot more detail in the next episode in this series. Commandment number 6 is identity as recognition. Personality is about character and charisma. Yes, brands could no longer just have a good logo or a cute store. They needed to have a sassy Twitter presence like Wendy's, or silly commercials like every car insurance company, or they had to be super cool like Glossier, or super sexy like Skims. This is why brands share memes on Instagram or try to create posts that play into memes and that sort of algo language, because they want you to see them as a character that you relate to, maybe even see them as a person who would be your friend. Right now, I see so many brands making their own twist on that viral story of the couple being busted for having an affair on the kiss cam at the Coldplay show. And everybody's been running with that. And the reason they are doing that is because they want you to see their take on the meme and be like, ha ha ha, they are so funny. I laughed at what they did. We're digesting the same media. We have the same sense of humor. This brand is a friend to me. By now, at least one of you is getting really riled up and you're about to send me an email that says something like, okay, but what about small businesses? So let's talk about this for a moment. First things first, I'm going to say this probably multiple times in this episode. One of the goals of emotional branding is to make big businesses seem like small businesses. All right. And so in the world of actual small business marketing and just sort of brand presence on the internet or anywhere in this decade, and hopefully for the rest of time, it is more important than ever that small businesses emphasize the smallness of themselves and communicate in an authentic, genuine manner. When I'm teaching branding, and social media marketing to small business owners, or even working with my clients, I tell them to drop the we and us if they don't have employees and speak in terms of I and me a lot more often. I think many of us have been trained to use we and us to seem bigger and more important. I absolutely did that in the early days of Clotheshorse so people would take me seriously. If more than one person is working on a business, does that make them more worthy of respect? Not really. To be honest, I think it's really important that small business owners are transparent about themselves and the day-to-day reality of running their business and what matters to them. In an era when people defend the honor of TJ Maxx on Instagram, more than ever, small businesses need to differentiate themselves by leaning into and being super honest about their smallness, their values, and who they are behind the scenes. It is so important because you can tell a difference, I promise you, between a big company that is trying to act like it is a person and your friend and a small business that is literally one or two or even five people who legitimately really care about doing the right thing. And I know that right now it feels like the hardest time ever to have a small business. But I want to promise you that right now I see a big change happening. I see it in conversations all over the internet right now, where more and more people are recognizing that not only are these big businesses not who they thought they were, but that also the way they spend their money and how they spend their money and who they spend their money with has a major impact on the communities around them. And they want to have that good feeling of doing the right thing. And so there is a lot more interest in shopping small and pulling away from Target, for example. And I think getting out there and being genuinely who you are on the internet and being good to your customers and selling good product and, being human about it all is so refreshing and so radical right now. And this is what people want and need more than anything. I was telling a client yesterday that I actually feel like with the AI-ification of it all, right? We now more than ever want authenticity, integrity, humanity in everything around us, whether it's food or the fun stuff that we buy, the content we consume, the relationships we develop online. Leaning into smallness is more important than ever. The reality is that a lot of small businesses have a real, actual relationship with their customers. Big businesses do not. They cannot, right? They're too big. I think a lot about what it was like to go around town running errands with my grandma when I was a kid. She has lived her entire life in York, Pennsylvania. And when I was a kid, I can remember a time, it was brief, when big chains still had not invaded the county. Yes, we had McDonald's. We had some chain stores at the mall. There were 2 Kmarts, one on each end of the county. And there was one Toys R Us, which of course was the most magical place I'd ever been. But we didn't have Walmart or Target. We only had locally owned grocery stores. Most restaurants were not chains. Even the pharmacy was locally owned. We did not have a CVS in sight. So when we were out running errands, my grandma knew most of the business owners who were actively working in the stores at their businesses when we would go in. And so she stopped to chat with all of them. Running errands could take so long because of all these conversations. Either my grandma had grown up with these business owners or they were the children of people she had grown up with. There was a lot to catch up on. And in fact, my grandma actively hated and avoided the big chains that were slowly moving into town because they seemed faceless and greedy. These small business owners, they were the ones who showed up to fund the town Halloween parade or the high school homecoming dance. They funded local scholarships. They sponsored youth sports teams. They donated materials to my Girl Scout troop. Heck, some of them even helped pay for me to go to gifted camp every summer. Yes, gifted camp was real. Yes, we did a lot of logic problems. Yes, I loved it. Your town or city might be filled with big box stores now. The last time I went to New York City, I was struck by how many big chains had moved into spaces once occupied by locally owned small businesses. And yeah, it made me sad because I've done a lot of cross-country road trips at this point, and what I've noticed is more and more the outskirts of every town are full of strip malls with the same stores that I see back home, and a lot of the unique regional charm is kind of gone. So imagine going to New York City and it's also like, oh, there's a Michael's and a Nordstrom Rack and a Marshall's and a Trader Joe's all in a row. Great. Could have done this back home. It makes New York City really boring. I was telling Dustin that. I was like, I remember when I would go to the big city, growing up in the country, the big city to me was like where all the cool stuff was, right? And I would go to New York or go to Philadelphia or go to Baltimore because I could get things there that I couldn't get back home. I could see stuff that I'd never seen before. And now here I was seeing the same stuff that I could just drive across town here and see for myself. So many of you are probably feeling like, where can I find small businesses in a big box mega corporation world? Well, first off, ask your friends. Many of them probably do own small businesses or know someone who does. Next, look at your online communities. The new sort of small town Main Street of small businesses is online. The problem is that the super loud 20-lane highway of big business is kind of drowning them out. So engage with the accounts of small businesses by commenting, liking, and sharing so more people become aware of them. We got to trick the algorithm. Now, some of you are probably, it's a different group of people. You're getting ready to send me an email telling me that not all small businesses are good and some are run by bad people. Some of them underpay or don't pay at all their employees. Some of them create toxic and abusive environments, and some are actively scamming their customers. Yeah. Yes to all of that. The reality of human existence is that some people are kind of sketchy and cruel. Some people create a lot of harm, and some of them do that via their business. There are shitty people in just about every industry working any kind of job you can imagine. Ask me about the early childhood educator who drugged and sexually assaulted me. Some small business owners suck, and that's why it makes it even more important to lift up and support the small businesses that are working hard to do the right thing, so they don't get lost in the noise created by big businesses and shitty small businesses. A lot of this emotional branding stuff is about creating the illusion of small business for big businesses. Maybe you won't eat at fast food chains because you think they are all big corporate food science, but then Wendy's makes you laugh on Twitter, so you give it a chance because suddenly Wendy's has a personality. Or maybe Sephora sends you a discount code for your birthday and you feel like they really care about you and you have a real relationship with them. I'm always super wary of large businesses and even medium-sized businesses that pretend to be small businesses. My worst job ever, which I've mentioned here before, still seems to masquerade as a small women-owned feminist business. But when I was there, we did like $30 million in sales in 1 year. And sure, that's not Amazon, but it's definitely not a small business either. But people fell for it. That company also mostly reposts other people's memes on its Instagram account because it makes them seem real and fun, like a business run by one or two really fun, cool people. It's not. The CEO has definitely read emotional branding because her background is in marketing at Nike. So, don't get me started. But actually, one more thing about that job. That business also felt that marketing was the most important part of running a successful business, that the product mattered less than the branding around it. It didn't need to fit. It didn't need to be great quality. It didn't need to be a value for the money. People would show up and buy it no matter what if the branding was good. And I think that like a lot of brands have been able to coast off of that for a long time. But I think we're all sort of having this light bulb moment in the past year where we're like, why are all these brands selling us low quality, poorly fitting stuff? And why do we keep showing up to buy it? And I like to think that if we stick to that, if we trust our gut on that feeling, that perhaps we can be a part of creating the change that will stop these sort of like, in my opinion, unethical business practices of creating low quality stuff for customers. A brand does not care about you if they sell you shitty product. They just care about making money. Okay, commandment number 7. The functionality of a product is about practical or superficial qualities only. Sensorial design is about experiences. So that's like some heady stuff. What does that mean? Basically, it doesn't matter how great a product works if the design isn't cool and interesting. And listen, you know I'm right because humans really do judge a book by its cover. Apple products are a great example of this phenomenon. They don't just work well, but they look and feel cool. And the Apple Store feels both futuristic and warm, clean, but somehow cozy. I still try to avoid it at all costs, but I know people like going there. It always looks busy. I can't tell if people are having a good time, but they're there. And the thing is, sure, an iPhone is great, but I've actually heard that a lot of these Samsung phones are actually better and do more things, but the brand is less cool. And iPhone versus Android has always been a vibes and branding issue, just like Mac versus PC. Well, okay, I will say, I feel like a lot of PCs are lower quality than Macs, but not all, right? Nonetheless, iPhone versus Android, PC versus Mac, it has been primarily a vibes and branding issue, okay? Meaning Apple has this aura of coolness, of being the brand, of cool, creative, aesthetic people who are somehow operating on a higher plane, right? And it permeates, it gets into all of our brains, okay? I had an Android for years. I loved it. It had a pull-out keyboard. It was a great phone, good camera, all this stuff. And the only reason I upgraded to an iPhone is because back then, Instagram was not available for Android phones yet. And that alone was also a branding decision on the part of Instagram because Instagram back then wanted to be the app for cool, creative, aesthetic people who were somehow operating on a higher plane, right? By focusing and limiting the reach of Instagram to iPhone users, there was a great sort of intersection, a synergy of customer types there, right? Like iPhone already had this customer segment, the vibes, the aura of coolness. Instagram sort of got to acquire that by only making its app for those people. And it was making quite a statement, right? Now, I will say I am not immune to this. At this point, most of my devices are Apple, mostly because once you have one and you need another one, it's like get the one that matches. It's easiest from like a software and setup perspective. But I do remember the first time I bought a MacBook and it was twice as expensive as a PC. And this was in a time when I did not have a lot of money, but I really, really wanted to be at the coffee shop looking cool with a MacBook. And so I bought it, right? Back when I was working at ModCloth, yes, ModCloth initially gave me a PC as my work laptop. And I had a MacBook at home, but you know, when I was traveling, I wasn't taking both computers with me. And I was in this really messed up long distance thing. This is when I was living in LA. This is not too long before I met Dustin, actually. I was in this weird messed up thing with a guy in Portland who actually it turned out was still with his ex-girlfriend, who he told me was his ex-girlfriend, and lots of drama ensued and it was really messed up and I swore off dating after that. Anyway, I was on a trip to Portland to visit my family. I met up with him at a coffee shop where I was working on my PC, and he made fun of me relentlessly for not having a Mac, even though I kept being like, this is my work computer. And that should have been a red flag that this guy just sucked, but sometimes I need a few more flags, like getting harassed by who I thought was his ex-girlfriend and finding out they're still together. Anyway, I like to think I facilitated them moving in together with all of that. So that worked out. I went back to LA and I asked my boss if I could get a MacBook instead. And they got me one, right? But how silly is that? We're like adults. Anyway, this is how deep this branding, design, emotion, coolness, the aura of it all really affects us. Even people like myself, who I feel like I'm pretty immune to branding because I've had to live in it for so long and I see the tricks. Commandment number 8, ubiquity is seen, emotional presence is felt. This one does affect my feelings about a brand. Basically, if we see logos, billboards, merch, and commercials everywhere for a brand, it feels less premium and important to us. And really, the less a brand advertises itself, the cooler it seems, right? We trust it more. It almost feels like that brand has more integrity, and we are super cool for being one of the select few to know about it. This probably seems like a no-brainer to us right now in the 2020s, but for years, the prevailing strategy in brand marketing had been saturate the zone. Get in front of customers before your competitor does. So we're talking billboards and print media ads, commercials, contests, coupons, catalogs, etc. And also to get your product into as many physical locations as possible by opening stores or selling wholesale to anyone who would have you. Basically drown out the competition by making the most noise. And by the time we reached the beginning of this century, people were kind of like distrustful of advertising. Even though it's probably still working on them, there was a little bit more skepticism around it. And heavily advertising a brand began to feel like a misstep. Gobe sort of put it into print by saying that. When I was working for Urban Outfitters in the 2000s, we had the most minimal marketing team ever. Basically, we didn't do advertising at all. That was a rule of the company, and that included not just Urban Outfitters, but Anthropologie and Free People too. No ads in magazines, no commercials, no billboards, nothing, right? Not sponsoring events, nothing. Being as uninvolved as possible, except for a long time, Urban did have a thing with South by Southwest, but that was it. And the only other really like marketing that we did was sending stuff out for PR, like to get placement in magazines. We had a tiny team for that. We sent out a catalog like every other month. That was it. And the belief was that advertising was not premium and would essentially kill the coolness of the brand. Now, it was interesting. It was like 2017, 2018. Justin and I were still living in Portland, Oregon. And we were driving across the bridge from the east side to the west side. And there was a huge billboard on a building that you could kind of only see from the bridge, really, that was for an Urban Outfitters and Fila collaboration. And I gasped. I turned to Justin and I said, you don't realize this is like a big deal, because the policy of this company for decades has been no advertising. What does this mean about what's happening at that brand right now? This idea of not advertising, Urban and none of the Urban brands doing that, was pretty wild at that time. But in this century, when the world is kind of saturated with stuff, brands and items that are more difficult to find feel more special and premium. And people are willing to pay more money for it, whether it's vintage clothing or a cult makeup brand or one-of-a-kind small run apparel and jewelry. Bigger brands can create this illusion without overtly advertising, but small businesses actually have this magic, okay? It's not an illusion. So I'm going to give all of you makers and small brands out there a really important piece of advice right now. Don't let the jerks on social media who tell you that you're overpriced ruin your day. They were never going to be your customer in the first place. And I promise that the right customer thinks your stuff is super valuable and unique, and they will pay the price that pays your bills. Ignore the noise. Those people just wanted to be mean to someone on the internet. One thing that is an important element of emotional branding that we'll talk about next week is the idea that brands should be selling us stuff in a way that seems like they are not actually trying to sell us stuff. And social media, which was just barely emerging when Gobe wrote this book, is the easiest way to do that via influencers, haul videos, giveaways, carousels of photos customers took of themselves wearing the clothes, sharing memes, etc. All of this gives brands access to customers and an ability to remind them of their existence without seeming too sales focused. It gives them that emotional presence. They are sort of tapping us on the shoulder every day to remind us that they exist without explicitly running a commercial or taking out a billboard. And we're going to talk about that, like I said, a lot more next week. And a lot of the sort of, trends that Gobe identified at the beginning of the century that sort of became the tropes for how brands have been selling us stuff since then. Commandment number 9, communication is telling, dialogue is sharing. With this one, Gobe is digging into this idea of advertising without advertising. He recommends targeted, more personal messages like a discount code on your birthday or social media posts that start a conversation with you. Like these stories that you'll see that a brand will share that'll be like this or that, where you click on a sticker, or I guess you tap on a sticker. That kind of engagement is intended to be a more personal moment with you, making you feel as if you're part of the conversation that brand is having. And back at ModCloth, we did this thing called Be the Buyer, and we did it quarterly. And I'll just tell you, all of us on the buying team over time began to call it Be the Sales section because what would happen is we would go to see all our vendors at the San Pedro Apparel Mart, and we'd pull a few things that we were like not 100% certain we wanted to buy, but that maybe the customers would like. We would throw them up on the website, and for a certain period of time, customers could show up and vote for their favorites. The items that got the most votes, we would then actually buy, and they would be available for sale. And the percentage of people who voted and then actually bought the item, because of course we have that data, was incredibly small. And often these items ended up being really poor sellers that eventually went on sale. And from a buyer, like looking at a spreadsheet, doing all the math of it all perspective, it was very frustrating and disappointing to waste budget on these items. That's how it felt for me. But I was talking with my friend who started the same day as me, who worked in marketing, and she said, actually, Be the Buyer is really more of a marketing thing. It's huge for us. It gets so much customer engagement. People get the emails about Be the Buyer, go vote that day, and then go buy something else on the site at that moment. So even though they don't come back and buy stuff that they voted for, they did make a purchase because they got all excited about being part of this process. And so really the money we spend on inventory for Be the Buyer is really marketing budget at the end of the day, if we look at it like through that lens. And I was like, wow, like she's so right. This is just another way that we are building this relationship of trust and communication with our customer without taking out an ad, right? So there's a lot of things like that that exist out in the world right now. And I'm sure now that we're talking about it, sort of pulling back that curtain, you're remembering things that you have seen that have accomplished a similar feelings situation for customers. Another common marketing email that you might get these days is the text-only email that appears to just be a straight-up email written by the CEO or founder of the brand, and then they sign it at the end. It will come from their email address, but really, it was probably written by marketing, and it's really coming from Klaviyo or MailChimp or some other mass email sending platform. It's really just another piece of junk mail, but people respond to these emails. They really think that the CEO emailed just to them. It's highly successful. For a lot of my clients, when we look back at the productivity of emails, we see that these kinds of emails drive more sales. And I also saw this when I was working in the corporate environment. Like people love this, but like I said, it's just another piece of junk mail. Also in this section of his book, Gobe underscores the power of PR, meaning like if you can just get your stuff in front of the right people at magazines and get it in movies and stuff, your sales are guaranteed, which I do think back then was 100% true. It is to a lesser extent now. The problem with the PR landscape now is that most product placements you are going to pay to be a part of, right? So all the BuzzFeed lists of the 10 things you should buy right now, or like a fashion blog's roundup of the best dresses of the summer, and all these other things are actually paid placement, meaning not like explicitly taking out an ad, but the writer of that piece will pick items and then the brand will supply an affiliate link. Every time a customer reads that article, clicks through the link, and makes a purchase, the platform that published that article gets a cut of the sale. And unfortunately, that is what is fueling the ecosystem of pretty much any press, any media around fashion, beauty, decorating, home maintenance, anything you can think of, electronics, all the stuff right now. So PR isn't quite as pure as it once was. It really is just explicitly advertising to get these kinds of placements. The final commandment is service is selling. Relationship is acknowledgement. But the other things that Gobe sort of started by talking about selling without selling is a lot of things we've come to expect as normal in this century. You know, brands sponsoring events or having a big presence there. Blogs, remember when every brand had a blog, right? This was how they would build the lifestyle and framing of their brand. Like, this is the kind of music that we're into, and this is the art, and this is shots of people doing cool things or someone you should get to know. And that all reflects the image of this brand, right? Social media, especially Instagram, kind of killed the corporate blog, and now brands could just show what their brand was on social media, but it's the same kind of thing. And I remember being in so many meetings at Nasty Gal in the large meeting room that was called Mean Girls. I would be in there with my friend Sherry, Kim, who some of you know from the department, a few other people from like buying, design. And we would talk constantly. This was my thing that I was hung up on because I was really into social media at that point. And I mean, I guess I still am. But I could see that Nasty Gal was blowing it. And I also will just say all my years at Urban and then at ModCloth had taught me a lot about building a relationship with a customer and building a lifestyle and a brand and all this emotional branding stuff. And I said constantly, we are blowing it on social media. Our entire grid is just photos, model shots from the photo studio here or photo shoots that we've done for marketing of our product. We're never posting about music or art or films or memes or getting out in the world or all the cool stuff that is here in LA to do. We are not building the lifestyle that customers would want to be a part of. We are explicitly just trying to sell stuff. And that is a huge missed opportunity for a brand that, to be honest, is selling overpriced, low quality clothing, coasting on vibes right now. We're losing momentum on that. And in fact, the company was, because the company was investing a lot of money into new customer acquisition via digital advertising. So what would happen is the company would spend a couple $100s to get a new customer to come in and buy something. The customer would place an order. They would get it. They would be disappointed by the quality of the product, and they would return it all. So right there, the company had made no money off of that customer, and the customer would never come back. So then the company actually lost money because they had paid so much money to get that person to buy something in the first place. And that was one of the reasons the company was just hemorrhaging money and ultimately went bankrupt. Nasty Gal had been coasting for a while off of the success of the Girl Boss book, but then really wasn't even using that as a way to talk to customers on social media. It was just advertisements every day of new things you could buy. And it sort of made the brand less cool when it had all the potential in the world with just a little more attention to all of this emotional branding. Now, of course, eventually the low quality of the product was going to catch up with the brand, but I think it could have had a few more years of like solid sales, and we could have all had employment if we wanted to stick around. The final commandment of emotional branding is service is selling. Relationship is acknowledgement. This is where Gobe almost explicitly directs brands to fake the relationship that consumers have with small businesses. He says, who does not feel special when someone in a store, a restaurant, or even an online merchant welcomes you by name? And to be fair, one time Dustin and I met my parents at the Applebee's in Salem, Oregon, and everyone there really did know my dad and seemed very excited to have him there. We felt like celebrities by association. I said to Dustin, maybe Applebee's is cooler than I thought. We did eat there then a few years later on a road trip, and it made me really sick. Different Applebee's, and I don't think it was food poisoning. My stomach cannot handle the Applebee's. But we can see here how Gobe's advice plays out in emails from Gap that start with, "Hey, Amanda," or even marketing texts and push notifications from brands who magically know when you are near a store. Or maybe you're talking about pool slides with a coworker, and then you open Instagram to find it full of pool slides from different brands. We know all of this is just data, not true relationships and care, right? But it feels a little bit like they care and know us better than we know ourselves. Ultimately, the goal of emotional branding is to create an illusion for customers, and it can come in many forms. Going back to that interview that Gobe did with Design Emotion, he said, the head, heart, and gut approach is a way to decode people's motivations and create an emotional brand identity. We have to assume that everyone has a rational side and need to be involved in society and deep gut desires that are self-revealing. We also have to accept that the scientific and psychological world has concluded that contrary to what we believe, most of our decisions, if not all, are emotional and driven by our guts. In our work, we always try to find the percentage of head, heart, and gut a brand needs to express. A fragrance, for example, is mostly about gut, an insurance program mostly about head, and a baby product about heart. Where I have seen this process work best is in evaluating the perceptions people have for a brand around those emotional guidelines. And he's right. I see this playing out around me with every brand and the kinds of emails they send, the kinds of conversations they try to start. And the illusions that these brands build can vary in terms of the sort of strategy that they're taking, the route that they are choosing. Maybe they choose one, maybe they go with all of them, but when you start to see them, you can't unsee them. One common path is the illusion of scarcity and coolness. When something feels top secret or rare, it feels more premium, like only you and a few other select super cool people know about it. So you're likely to be more loyal to that brand, buy just about anything they sell you, and even pay just about any price they ask. And I would cite as a hilarious example here the streetwear brand Supreme. So I've traveled around the world, and I don't mean that as a humble brag, but every time I walked by a Supreme store, no matter where it was in the world, there was a line to get in. And Dustin and I always laugh about it. Anytime we see a line, we're like, oh, is that a line for Supreme? Even if it's like really, I don't know, out here at the farmer's market and people are just waiting for the really good empanadas. And we were in New York recently, and there was this line around the block, and we're like, ha ha ha, another Supreme line. But guess what? It was a line to get into the Supreme store. And this makes me laugh because from 2020 to 2024, Supreme was owned by VF Corporation, which is a megacorp that also owns Dickies, Vans, JanSport, Icebreaker, Wrangler, Timberland, so many more. This company has a massive portfolio. So it wasn't some cool indie streetwear brand. It hasn't been for a while, right? Then it was sold to another mega corporation who owns it currently. It's called EssilorLuxottica. I totally mangled that pronunciation. They bought it in 2024, and that company also has a massive portfolio that includes Sunglass Hut, Ray-Ban, LensCrafters, Oakley, Pearle Vision, so much more. Yes, Supreme is owned by a company that owns a lot of the eye doctors, optometrists, whatever you want to call them, that are in malls. How is that cool or edgy or anything, right? Still, Supreme maintains that image of being authentic and cool and rare and special because of marketing, social media, partnerships, store experience, and media coverage. And so, yes, still somehow people wait in line to shop from this allegedly rare small business streetwear brand that is actually, just part of a massive conglomerate. It works. And by the way, I'll also just say that emotional branding of this nature, the idea of coolness, can be used to lure in employees and pay them a lower wage than other companies might pay. True story. Raise your hand if you've been underpaid for the privilege of working at a cool job. I'm currently raising both hands and my feet because I have had so many jobs where I was paid about $20,000 less because the company was cool. And I remember working at one place where the CEO, who was also underpaying everybody for the privilege of working somewhere cool, being outraged that someone would actually ask for their fair market value because they didn't seem to understand how lucky they were to potentially be hired by such a cool place. So the CEOs also seem to believe the hype. I don't know. Okay, another path that a brand might take to pursue emotional branding is the illusion of identity, that shopping from this brand versus any other brand shows who you are to the world, which is often true, sadly enough. Lululemon leggings show you have some money. Shopping at Target over Walmart used to mean you had taste and liberal values. Shopping at Anthropologie means you have eclectic, elevated, worldly tastes. Whole Foods means you care about your health, and so on. And actually, the number of times I just said tastes as I was walking through this reminds me once again, one of the most controversial things I've ever said on the internet that had many white men messaging me to tell me that I was the stupidest person they'd ever met is that taste is just a classist construct. And I would take it one step further to say that in this century, taste is a marketing concept. A brand wants to convince you that you have the best taste because you shop from them. What? Why does taste even matter then, right? Just do what you like to do, wear what you like to wear, eat the food you like to eat. Which is a great moment to assign this episode's homework, which is, how do your favorite brands make you feel? What do you think using those products and supporting those brands says about you? Or what would you like an outsider to think it says about you? The last path that is often chosen by brands who are trying to accomplish emotional branding is the illusion of relationship and community. This like you're going to be a part of something kind of thing. Going back to TJ Maxx and its army of Maxxinistas ready to fight with strangers on the internet, TJ Maxx makes its customers feel like they are part of a secret group of very smart, very stylish people who TJ Maxx is there to serve and protect. This is how cults build their following, with a message of, the world is terrible, but fortunately the cult is here to protect you. All of the language on the TJ Maxx website is about searching the world for great values and great choices, especially for the customer. And most importantly, removing all of the gimmicks and the scamminess of every other brand out there to give them the true price of things. Never mind that TJ Maxx would also love to offer you a high APR credit card to pay for those purchases. And while TJ Maxx might be here to offer you hot deals, are they going to show up to contribute to your GoFundMe to pay your medical bills? Like a real friend would. I would also say that Shein and Temu play into this similar idea of like a quasi-protective relationship with the customers. Sort of like, hey, we sell you stuff factory direct so you can get low prices on everything and live like a billionaire. Unlike every other company out there, we're actually cutting out the middleman so you can live the life you deserve, like a billionaire. Or Amazon might not be trying to be cool or masquerade as a small business, good, but it's offering you convenience and sort of limitless options. And you can kind of order and receive stuff from Amazon just about everywhere at this point. It can start to feel like Amazon is there for you no matter where you go. And that alone creates a feeling of safety and trust. And in a world where huge businesses like Amazon have essentially crushed the competition, getting rid of a lot of local options, Amazon becomes even easier and convenient compared to what you have left to choose from, which only sort of magnifies that dependence you have on them and how you start to see them as almost like a caregiver of your life, right? It builds this feeling of trust with them that maybe they don't deserve. As we finish this episode, because wow, this has been a lot, I know, I want to remind you that the purpose of this series is to untangle all the ways brands and branding are subtly influencing our behavior. Whether it's something as extreme as going scorched earth in the comments section with a stranger to defend your favorite brand, or purchasing something from every drop, or even just putting something you would totally wear back on the rack at the Goodwill just because the label says Chico's or Old Navy. And as we are starting to see very clearly, big brands are not our friends. Shein is not your friend. Amazon is not your friend. Anthropologie, not your friend. Neither is Temu. Neither are any of these big companies that people will show up to defend on social media. These brands are not going to take care of us when we need help. They don't really care about our birthdays, but they would love for us to use that discount code that they sent in that birthday email. And to really get down to brass tacks here, they don't even care about selling us quality product at this point. It's just vibes. They continue to sell us worsening quality because the vibes, created via emotional branding, convinced us a while back that we should stick with this brand through thick and thin. But what do we really get out of that highly transactional relationship? What struck me most as I did the research for this particular episode was how many virtual communities are built around particular stores and brands, whether it's Aldi, TJ Maxx, Target, Madewell, Glossier, or any other number of small indie brands. In a weird way, there's some sort of magic happening in these groups. Stories are being shared, friendships are forming, and people are even educating others about things like pronouns and why diet culture is a scam. True story. I've seen this happen in multiple subreddits and Facebook groups for different brands. It's amazing. This is why I'm hesitant to say that these groups are inherently bad. But the fact remains, they do drive people to shop more, often for things they don't need. And sure, in the New Works group, people are swapping and reselling their clothes, which is amazing. But in the Aldi and TJ Maxx groups, people are just buying stuff and kind of hoarding it. And that kind of thing worries me. But what if you could take your brand fan community to the next level? Like, do some activities out in the world together, do a secondhand sale together, and donate a portion of the proceeds to a mutual aid organization or a GoFundMe. What about sharing laundry tips and repair advice? Or what could your group do to take the relationships to the next level beyond shopping? After all, no brand is ever going to save the world, but we as individuals certainly can change things for the better when we're working with one another. So let's get these groups working on something big. Okay, everyone, that's the end of installment 2 in this series. And I just want to say I've been enjoying researching and writing this so much. This is another 30-page single-spaced script right here. I really hope that you are enjoying it too. Next week, we're going to continue talking about Mark Gobe and emotional branding by dissecting the branding trends he predicted in the aughts and how they became a part of the brand playbook through the 2010s. We're going to talk about cause marketing, girl boss, brands that stand for something, Tums and the buy one, give one model, why everything for a while was pink in September, a portion of the proceeds and roundups at checkout, 1% for the planet, B Corps, greenwashing, vegan leather, words that got ruined by brands using them in bad faith, and marketing on the luxury of time and convenience. Wow, we have a lot to cover. It's pretty epic, right? So, thank you for listening to another episode of Clotheshorse, written, researched, edited, hosted, all the things by me, Amanda Lee McCarty. If you liked what you heard, please leave a rating, a review, subscribe, tell your friends. Let's get more people to join the conversation. If you'd like to support my work financially, there are many ways you can do that. You can find it in the show notes. You can find it in my bio on all the social media platforms. Lastly, but of course, never leastly, thank you to Mr. Dustin Travis White for our music and audio support and listening to me rant about leggings. And I will talk to you all soon. Do your homework. Bye.